जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की fateh. Once again, on behalf of the committee of Singh Sabha London East, I'd like to welcome you all to the Sikh Channel Youth Show. With me, I have a panel of young Sikhs from our local area. I'll go ahead and introduce the panel. I have Bhai Amritpal Singh. Now, Bhai Amritpal Singh is a business consultant and also an active member of the Sikh community within the local area, and also quite involved in activities within the city groups, which some of the Sikh professional groups organise. We have Manmohan Singh ji. Now, Manmohan Singh, familiar face to you all. Manmohan Singh is a police officer in the Metropolitan Police, heavily involved in local seva as well as national seva. We have Bhai Tasveer Singh at the back. Tasveer Singh is a finance manager, again a very familiar face to you. And we have at the end here Bhai Sukhbir Singh. Now, Bhai Sukhbir Singh has a very interesting job. He's a headhunter, stroke management consultant. So take that as you may. But Bhai Sub's involved in some very interesting things as part of his daily work. So as usual, we'll go straight into the topic. And this week, we're going to talk about what's relevant around the month of November. And that is the actual terminology or the phrase remembrance. How does remembrance actually affect us? Now, the reason we've chosen this topic, remembrance, is that in the month of November, we do appear to have quite a few historical events that we get together and we either commemorate at the Gurdwara or we discuss amongst ourselves within the community, which have a massive impact and a massive effect on us as a global community. To name a few, in the month of November, we start off by remembering the genocide, as we call it now, that took place in November 1984, where mass killings of Sikh took place, rapes of Sikh women, and the looting and the property damage of Sikh properties within Delhi and other cities took place in just a short span of 6 days, I believe, in total. So that's something that we normally start the month of November in. Then we go into the month, and Bandishore Divas comes into the month as well. So we have remembrance and contemplation on Guru Har Gobind Sahib, our sixth Guru, and we focus upon the activities of Guru Har Gobind Sahib Gurdwara, particularly the events around Bandishore Divas and the release of Guru Har Gobind Sahib. So that's something, again, we'll bring into the discussion. And finally, another strong event that takes place and plays a massive part, especially the British Sikhs, is remembrance, the actual Remembrance Day itself, and remembrance of the World Wars and the Sikh participation within the World Wars. Now, as you can see around, as Sikhs, we commemorate the sacrifices of the veterans and the people, the soldiers who lost their lives in the World Wars with the poppy. We're aware of a specific Khanda poppy that's also been commissioned by the Sikh community to represent our sacrifices within the Sikh community. So we played a big part in that, and that's something else that we'll bring into this discussion. So, talking about remembrance, starting from what does remembrance actually mean to us? Why does remembrance play such an important part in Sikh culture? When we talk about November 84, and we talk about just not November, but other events in Sikh history, such as Kalukaras, genocides, Sakas, for instance, the Nankana Sahib massacres of the 1920s, Panja Sahib, the deaths at Gurdwara Panja Sahib back in the 1920s as well, 1984, battles, Kalukaras, constantly comes up in Sikh discussions, in kathas, and in Sikh prayer as well, in Ardas. Now, let's not forget, remembrance plays a massive part in the Sikh Ardas, and we're all familiar with the actual Ardas itself, particularly the part where we say Jina Singha Singhaniya ne Dharm hate ceased it band katwaye खोपरा लहाइयाँ चरकरियाँ ते चरे आर्या नाल चीरे गए गुरुद्वारा दी सेवा लई कुर्बानियां कीतियां धर्म नहीं हारे सिक्खी केसा स्वासा संग निभाई तिना दी कमाई दा ध्यान तरके खालसा जी साहिब बोलना जी वाहेगुरु. That's something that we say twice a day. Most good Sikhs would say that twice a day. Now if you actually look at the literal translation and literal meanings of that, when we're talking about people who have given sacrificed their heads, the heads have been cut off. We're talking about people who have been cut into pieces, from the joints of their bodies. We're talking about people whose scalps have been removed. We're talking about people who have been tied and rotated on wheels and broken into pieces. We're talking about people who have been cut by saws, boiled in cauldrons. So that's the kind of imagery that we're discussing. Very graphic. I think often we don't understand the graphic descriptions that are being mentioned in the Ardas itself. And then you walk around the Gurdwara Sahibs and you will see our pictures within the langar halls and other parts of the Gurdwara of various events that have taken place in Sikh history. You will see the images of Bhai Taru Singh, of Bhai Mani Singh, of the Sikh lady, the Sikh Bibiyan, whose babies, the parts of their children were wrapped around their as hars around their neck. So got very graphic images there. Now often an outsider might come in there and look at us and think, well, what are you guys on? What are you guys going on about? Why are you constantly bringing this imagery out? Why are you constantly digging up on the past? I mean, is that something that we should be accused of? Are we constantly digging up the past? Should we leave the past behind? Should we just walk away? Should we just get on with our future? Is that something we should do? Perhaps we bring too much of our past up. So let's go straight into that discussion. And if anyone's keen to start that off.
I think one of the important things is that this remembrance and this focusing on what our Guru Sikhs did. First of all, that's just us respecting those who followed the footsteps of the Guru. Don't forget Guru Arjan Dev Ji, Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji, they gave these gruesome sacrifices as well.
Mm-hmm.
How they were, how Guru Arjan Dev Ji Shahidi, we know how if somebody was to find out, it was gruesome. And how Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji, that was gruesome. So, we don't forget those. And we then respect those who followed those footsteps. And in terms of the past, we're not dwelling on the past. I think what we do from that is we draw inspiration in order to move forward. The first thing that comes to mind is that when the Vadda Kalukara happened in the 18th century, 25 years later, the missiles came in, then Maharaj Ranjit Singh. So from that Kalukara, we then drew inspiration to actually build kingdoms from.
Mm-hmm.
We took the step forward in that. So that's really, from this remembrance, we actually draw the inspiration to move forward. So like what they always say, the past becomes is the reason for your future. And that is shown in Sikh history. Mm-hmm. And that's how we, that's how we will move forward. Whatever the past is, will be.
Saying that, they say that if you don't know where you've come from, you don't know where you're going. Certainly that, I think, applies to us as Sikhs, because I think when we structured the Ardas, when our ancestors or predecessors, as you would like to call them, did structure our Ardas, they ensured that we remembered what we needed to remember in order to, what Bhai Sahib said here, in order to draw some inspiration, to have a direction, to take ourselves forward. Hanji.
Just to echo what Das just said, the word remember itself is something which is obviously an action, a physical action, that you are going through the thought process of thinking about those particular events that took place. What you're doing is you're reigniting, reliving almost those particular events.
Mm-hmm.
And like Singh said, it is to draw that kind of inspiration, that power. Because when the Pradaka Logara did happen in the 18th century, the Sikhs thought, we're not going to let ourselves be in this situation again.
Mm-hmm.
Why should we lose 25,000 Sikhs in a week? Because the Pradaka Logara was of that magnitude, when 25 to 30,000 Sikhs were massacred in a week.
Mm-hmm.
So it's to relive and to re-energize, re-empower yourself. Okay, look, I have to deal with this. And we can only do that if that remembrance is there. Two-way remembering is, you can remember and dwell and just do sorrow. But in our dharam, in our faith, the remembrance is always for Chardi Kala. It was always for Aga. Aggi karna. Maharaj Bani is always Aga ko taran. Always think about the next step you can take forward, not backwards. And from the history, historical, it gives us some morals, ethics, values, and education. Okay, look, our gurus are very diplomatic. The ways of doing their work, doing dharam prachar was very skillful, and we should adapt those particular qualities to take it further.
I think you've touched on a good point there, because I think now that we can bring in Bandishore Divas into this, and just to clarify with the viewers at home, I think as a Sikh community we're all aware that Bandishore Divas, probably known in the mainstream as Diwali mainly, but specific to us as Sikhs, I think often we're very confused on what Bandishore Divas actually means to us as Sikhs. It's not probably communicated well enough in the schools, it's not communicated well enough between us in our families, and we often just stick to the mainstream version of Diwali, Festival of Lights. Yeah, we've got a good moral story there of Rama fighting against Ravana, you've got good versus evil. So there's a good moral story there, but for us, Bandishore Divas has got very powerful meaning. You know, it's a day of liberation. It's a day, now you just mentioned there that the Gurus with their moral and ethical stand worked towards the betterment of others, and you've got here a Guru Har Gobind Sahib, who could have been freed, yet he ensured with his freedom was the freedom of 52 other political prisoners. Now that's a mass foundation.
He could have left entirely on his own. He was free to do so, and I think it's important as well. We're talking about Guru Har Gobind Singh Sahib, and we talk about remembrance, and it's about evolution. It's about what happens to you changes you as a person. That's right on a personal level, and it's right on a community level as well. So it was the Italian philosopher Cicero who said to not know what happened before you were born is to remain forever a child. Because if you think about it, it's like Groundhog Day. If every time that you learn something you forget it instantly, you're going to constantly be going in the same rotation without any change at all. So evolution, we saw with Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji, from Guru Arjan Dev Ji's martyrdom, there was a change, and it was a change in the Sikh psyche, in the Sikh philosophy, the Sikh theology, which carried right on the militarization, the acceptance of Miri Biri, and the idea that spiritual power is only as strong as your ability to be able to defend your right to carry out that worship, have the right to belief. So it was that understanding that, you know, Sikhi wasn't in the frame, or didn't believe in becoming an ascetic and sitting on a mountain somewhere and just dwelling on the spiritual internally with yourself. It was about being part of the community, empowering the community, and allowing other people to have the right to worship, the right to have free association and belief. So Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji, we can see there's an evolution there from Guru Arjan Dev Ji. Bandishore, there was again, because of the timing of it, often for years has been confused along with Diwali. Now, the historical record is that Bandishore Divas, as in Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji, left the prison a few days before Gwalior Fort, a few days beforehand, where he'd been imprisoned by Jahangir. He left a few days before. It's when he reached Amritsar on Diwali, when it happened to be Diwali, and because the Guru had come and he'd released these 52 other political prisoners, of course Diwali was being celebrated anyway. But it's very important for us to draw a distinction between the two events, just because they happen to historically fall somewhere close to each other.
Most Sikhs just see it as a diva lighting exercise.
Well, it's an entirely different event, and I would say that, well, I think it's absolutely right to say that the framework that it's based on and what's inspired that are in two entirely different things. I appreciate that the Diwali story with Ravan and Rama is kind of seen as an allegory of the battle between good and evil. But also, if you take it onto, I mean, it can also be viewed on a quite personal level. You know, a personal feud or conflict between two families, essentially. Yeah. And you know, if we're to talk about remembrance, of course, Ravan's still burnt to this day in India, and you know that's millennia after it apparently took place. So you know, again, it's another facet for us to remember why we remember. And I think Manmugan put it very well, that other people talk about dragging up the past, or if you think about what happened in the past, you never get into the, you never move forward, you're stuck in the past. within Sikhi, it's not that kind of a remembrance. It's not a dwelling upon and burning and kind of hurting yourself internally by almost just being brought up with the hatred in remembrance. It's remembering, appreciating, and saying, okay, this is what's happened to us, and we can't ever forget it. You know, the ardas every day that it's done. I mean, we stand there, but if you try and visualize in your mind those images of the bibiyan with the tote of the butcher, you know, their arm, their leg that had been chopped into pieces, put around with a rope, hung around their neck, and then they were then forced to mill flour for the Mughal armies. Now, whilst the ardas is being said, if you try and visualize that, just close your eyes even if you need to, and just try and bring those images into your head, it will empower you.
It will.
It'll empower you in your daily life. You know, the little things which we get upset about, we all get sad and we get, you know, distraught about, these pale into insignificance against what Sikhs have been through. And it's when you look at that will give you power and strength in your own life as well.
100%. I mean, some very wise words there. You know, when I was looking at an encyclopedia definition of remembrance, and I found this very interesting. Remembrance is a fundamental characteristic of human nature to remember and commemorate, not merely for the sake of our own peace of mind, but for the instruction of future generations that they might recognize the price of freedom. So I think it's quite clear to what Bhaisuk Singh said as well. It's putting a value on what's happened. By remembering that, we're putting a value on those events, and we're not letting those events just be swept under the carpet. Maybe that's the best way of describing it. Hani?
I think you said it quite right at the beginning. Without knowing your past, you don't know where you're going. And there's also once I heard something along the lines of, if you truly do not know your history, you are like a leaf that doesn't know that you're part of a bigger tree. And I think this is what these kind of events and remembering events that have happened within the Sikh Dharma and within our community. It helps us define who we are, and gives us courage to kind of move, as you spoke about earlier. Gives us inspiration, gives us the ability to kind of go through our day-to-day activities without getting too ground up in what may be affecting us, sort of psychologically as well. I think, as you know, one of the biggest events that's going to be happening in November is the remembrance itself, the remembrance service, what
the world wars,
the price that was paid through human life for freedom, and again, it's that freedom that we need to remember. That how has it been sought? And you know, we started off by describing what it may have been a very different Europe if all those men and women hadn't laid down their lives. Nearly 70 years ago now. You know, and well, it's nearly
fascist country.
Exactly, you know. 90 years for the First World War. So, and again the same. And these ideas of freedom, they weren't something new that just came about. So 70 or 90 years ago, Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji, when he refused to leave prison during what we describe as Bandi Chor Divas, when he refused to leave prison on his own and he wouldn't leave without the 52 odd princes, it was because he cared about their freedom, not only his own but other people's freedom. And during the World War, people laid down their lives not for themselves but for others, for their future generations. And these sacrifices that people, our gurus, done, and who we remember in the Ardas, these sacrifices are what we remember, and it gives us a grounding on who we actually are.
In a way, it puts our day-to-day life into context. Because, you know, how bad can your day be? Because, you know, I'm not looking at it that way, but how bad can things be in life when you, like Baji mentioned there, when you do talk about the matas that had the tote of their children around their neck, and you look at yourself and you're thinking, you know, I've had a bad day, but, you know, they stuck to their Sikhi all the way through, because we do have down days. You're not going to deny it. You know, there are times when, you know, sometimes things do get you down a bit, but they do give you inspiration to carry on. You think, you know, they took these battles forward, you know, so it's worthwhile taking these battles forward. But I think one thing I just want to also bring in before Munmagan speaks is that with the whole Bandishore Divas, the story that leads up to the actual Bandishore Divas Day itself, if I'm not mistaken, Guru Har Gobind Sahib Maharaj was in prison for 7 years. I think we don't actually discuss that much. I think people don't actually realize that that was the duration. I might be wrong, and I do apologize, but I know it was a significant period of time. And I think we don't visualize this actual event in prison. You know, that Sikhs, the Guru of the Sikhs was in prison itself, and how we must have been dealing with that.
I mean, yeah, like what you're saying, yeah, it was 7 years of imprisonment. So again, let's not assume that this was a nice, open, clean prison. This would have been, you know...
Let's think about medieval prisons. If you've been to London dungeons, you know what prisons are like. You know, so let's not be clean. Yeah. We know what Indian prisons are like now.
Yeah.
What they've been then.
Those Rajah, those 52 Rajah, they were being poisoned every day. You know, slowly they were being poisoned. So they were, you know, at a very, very low point at the time. After then, you know, after they were released, after Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji got them released. I mean, again, it shows Maharaj's, in fact, wit to a point, because where, you know, Jahangir says that, you know, whoever holds on to Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji's chola will be released.
Game, that was it.
He played, Maharaj's wit was even more than that. He got the chola designed with 52 kalyan, so he cleared the whole prison out.
Yeah.
You know, so that shows how much. And then so the whole Bandishore, we call it Bandishore Divas, but it's not a day, because then from there Maharaj took, so Gwalior is Rajasthan. Yeah, from Rajasthan, Maharaj then came through and then came to Punjab. I mean, as far as I know, it was about a year's journey. And there are many gurdwaras which you'll see on that.
So it wasn't days.
This is liberation. That's why it's called Bandishore. This is the liberation tour, basically. You know, Maharaj went and liberated so many, and you'll find so many. It was like Maharaj, just while he was coming, people's lives were changing then in those areas. You know, there are many gurdwaras. You know, even there's the Gurdwara Sahib,
so which has got Maharaj on the route back to Amritsar.
And then there's the Gurdwara itself, which has Maharaj's Chola Sahib still. You know, the one with the 52 kalyan. You know, those kind of you know. So it have to see it in context. You know, it's more than just a day, but it's the end of that journey for Maharaj when he comes to Amritsar. And don't forget as well, Diwali itself, I mean, has always had importance in Sikh. It was always a Jor Mela. It's from Guru Amar Das Ji.
That's right.
Amar Das Ji days. They started the Jor Mela Seva, where we knew Sikhs couldn't come to see the Guru very often, so they would come maybe 2 or 3 times.
But we've got to think about it, the logistics of how Punjab would have been in those days. You needed to have meeting points, and you needed to have meeting points which the Aam Sangat recognised. So Diwali, you know, Vaisakhi, as far as I know, were those meeting points, and logistically we were able to mobilize. The Gurus were able to mobilize all the Sikhs together and have them in one place at that specific point in time. Hence, we use those festivals and those events.
I think just listening to that story, it makes me proud in a sense to know that I'm part of a community that's got such a rich history and culture, and surprising, like for such a young community, for such a young religion, if you want to call it, we've got such a rich heritage. So, and again, so coming back to the point of remembering, by making these stories more public and ensuring that the larger Sangat understand what exactly happened, the reasons why they happened, it kind of drives the community forward. And you were saying Mangan Party earlier about, you know, what happens next, what can we learn from these stories, and how can we move forward.
As we're on the Bandishore apne Divas itself, when you look at the characteristics or the Maharaj's kind of, you know, thought process, you know, Jahangir was the person who commissioned Guru Arjan Dev Ji Shahidi. You know, we always overlook the fact that Jahangir was the same emperor that, through the advice of Chandu, commissioned the Shahid Guru Arjan Dev Ji. And when Maharaj had the chance, Shyam Pasha, he didn't take revenge, like Paisa was saying earlier. When you look at the story of Ram and Ravan, it was a fight almost between families for revenge of the abduction of Sita.
Quite feudal. So
here is the parallel, the comparison. Here you got Maharaj, he's got the perpetrator right in his hands. He commissioned the actual assassination of Guru Arjan Dev Ji. And if Maharaj had an element of revenge, he could have taken it with all the power Maharaj had. or the Sangat he had, there would have been no question of taking it. But it wasn't about revenge. It was about making Jahangir understand where he went wrong, how he was ill-informed, and he did his own personal research through Chandu, and obviously he commissioned the assassination of Guru Arjan Dev Ji. So that shows that Maharaj, even though Maharaj had a lot of physical strength, a lot of spiritual strength, and he was very articulate in using warfare, he didn't misuse it. Yeah,
it was a way of showing us how important lobbying, campaigning actually can be.
Because you have to think, before Maharaj went into prison, by that time the Akal Takht was ready. The Khalsa was beginning to form. You had Singhs bringing in Kore,
visible
and you're telling me if those things were not given the command, they would not confronted Maharaj from Gwalior for 7 years? Of course they would have. But the fact remains that Maharaj didn't want to use physical force until it was necessary. So we need to again look at the kind of political strategies Maharaj used, which benefited the Sikhs and the wider community. And then Maharaj did get Chandu arrested and punished him as well for his deeds. That was because of Maharaj's good relationship with Jahangir. Because you have to remember, Jahangir was getting ill, and then he was saying to his advisors, remember, what I'm getting Bamar for? And I'm getting supane of lions, who are standing on my chest, and they're trying to kill me. And that started to happen since Sheikh Pasha came into prison. And then they said, you need to get Sheikh Pasha out of prison. Only then these dreams will go away and your health will regain. And hence we all know that Maharaj Nijri Kalavartaiya. But it's to, again, we have to look at the depth of the whole divas, not just the Ravalta, the Chelage. It's Maharaj's actual whole way of living, his way of thought process. I'm not here to kill this person, but to actually educate this person on how to move forward.
So as a community, it almost feels that we don't give justice to the whole events around Bandeshwar Divas. And like I said when Sukhbir Singh was talking, it's almost become a diva lighting exercise for us. I don't think anyone really understands why they come to the Gurudwara. Majority of us do come.
If we want to take a live present example, is the SOPW,
Sikh Organisation of Prisoner Welfare.
They are now leading this process of freeing political prisoners, be it Sikh at the present moment and non-Sikhs as well. But they're showing, look, our Guru led this light, and as Sikhs, we need to activize ourselves. And the Guru, and again, if you look at Guru Hargobind Maharaj, from the age of 16, he became active. He's made Guru from the age of 16. And Maharaj ne straight away, Miri Piri Dastan, Sukhbir just explained very nicely, adopted the spiritual and political right system straight away at the age of 16, and then continued it to the end. Sikhs need to be active. We need to be, in a way, looking at situations around us that need to be dealt with and get our hands dirty, get involved in whichever manner we can.
Let's not forget also that Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj, from very, in his 30s, was a political prisoner. And I think we also forget that. I think, I've mentioned this before as well. I think the imagery that we have of the Gurus and how the artists have represented these events often don't do it justice as well. No. When we see Guru Arjan Dev Ji with a chitta chola, very calm and relaxed, coming and sitting on a tati tavi, let's be honest, it was gruesome. There was 5 or 6 days of torture. There was certainly more than just Maharaj, the torture that Maharaj went through was more than just the tavi. There was hot sand being poured. There was psychological. Maharaj being wrapped in, I think it was in cowhide as well. There was a lot to this torture. Same with the Sahibzade as well. There was more to the torture of the Chote Sahibzade than just being bricked. So often, we take it for granted seeing these images. And seeing the elderly image of Guru Nanak Dev Ji and not realizing Guru Nanak Dev was a young man in his 30s when he stood up to Babur, and when the Babur Nama, which is represented in the Babur Nama, Babur Bani, sorry, my mistake, but it's represented in that, not much older than us guys sitting in here, really, to be honest with you.
That's just really interesting to know. Someone like myself, I didn't actually realize that Guru Nanak Dev Ji was imprisoned, and I guess that just goes to show that our gurus, right from the beginning, from Guru Nanak Dev Ji, were activists in their own way. And you're right. I think after during the time of Guru Hargobind Sahib Ji, we took on more of a military aspect, and
only on the outside.
Only on the outside.
I think I think it was always there. It was always there with the stands that Guru Nanak Dev Ji made.
Absolutely. And there's 2 points there. So firstly, that there are ways of being an activist that don't involve you to be aggressive in any sense. There's ways to be passively aggressive, if you want to say that. And secondly, as well, you said this a couple of times now, the introduction of Mehedi Pidi. And my understanding, and from what I've seen as well, is that even though Mehedi Pidi were introduced by Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji, the Mehedi was always kept smaller, rather.
Pidi is the religious side.
So Pidi being the religious side was kept higher than Pidi when erected, just to show that you had to be, no matter how much military,
the spiritual side was greater than the political side.
Yeah. So no matter how political you were to become, you had to keep your spiritual side higher as well.
Control it.
Yeah.
Control it. Yeah.
I think the gurus as well. There must be something so special about. When I explained this to the kids at camps and stuff, I think about how special what the gurus gave us was that people were willing to die for it. They gave us the freedom of the soul.
The gurus are willing to die for it.
Yeah, exactly. The gurus are willing to die for it. So that freedom of the soul, is what we're willing to die for. What Sikhs or our ancestors or our predecessors have been willing to die for.
I think it comes down again to, I suppose, the central pillar of Sikhi, which is truth. And whenever anybody speaks the truth, that does affect the tyrant, whether that's a regime or it's a dictator on his own. The point is, Guru Nanak Dev Ji became a thorn in the side of the establishment simply because he spoke the truth. And the same for all the gurus all the way along. So, bringing it up to the present time, or bringing it up to 28 years ago, when we start to talk about 1984, but obviously 1984 just didn't start in 84. It's been ongoing since. Well, it goes back quite some time, but certainly we talk about late 70s as the beginning of the kind of Sikh agitation for their rights. And again, whoever from the Sikh side was speaking the truth was being silenced. The way that governments tend to do that is if they can't overturn the facts, if they can't win the argument based on the actual evidence, what they do is they apply what's known as an ad hominem argument, which is basically you attack the person. And that's exactly what happened. You malign them. You question their intentions. You question what their motivations are. In fact, the clearest thing that you can do within a small community like the Sikhs is to turn people against one another. Start to talk to people, refer to them as traitors. That people have hidden agendas in what they're doing. And of course, this kind of this battle against truth. From the side of various governments, people over the centuries, is what Sikhs have fought against.
It's almost like a smokescreen to be put within the community to cause that problem. But I mean, if you draw inspiration, all this. The other day, I went for a meeting at work, and I walked past Caxton Street, and I saw Caxton Hall by St James's Station, St James's Park Station. And it was really overwhelming, and I was with the Guru from work, and I had to stop, and I explained to him the whole situation and stuff, but it felt really overpowering. Caxton Hall is where Udham Singh assassinated Odwaya, wasn't it? Odwaya, Michael Odwaya, who was the general governor, wasn't he? Governor of Punjab at the time. But just to make you realise, we're from a community that really do sort of take things forward and really do make sure that there is justice out there. The many thousands that would take the mic.
And as you touch on that particular, I don't want to dwell on it, but just quickly, Udham Singh worked for Michael Odwaya. Again, if you want to kill him out revenge, he would have killed him.
Could have done it in a more secure, in a quieter environment.
Exactly, and got away with it.
Yeah.
Because he worked for him, as he worked for him for a while, but he waited for the right moment. And I wanted to explain what
to
I'm doing.
Yeah.
Why am I doing this particular act? I'm not happy for doing it, but I'm doing it for this reason. So again, it shows that Sekti Bhavana Sikh's intention isn't revenge. It never has been. It's always, like Baisab said, it's about the truth. It's about the justice to be delivered. And if the world won't give us justice, the Sikhs will take it.
Yeah. I think
that's
things
quite
is also
simple.
Yeah,
and the Gurus did the same thing, defensive manner all the way. But when justice wasn't delivered, Maharani Ablik Jahan up into Aurangzeb, you are not the deliverer of justice, yet you are the man of God. In the Zafarnama. That's right. So if you classify yourself to be the man of God, then deliver justice. Because you are the ruler of the country. So just to bring Udham Singh's happening again, act into context. He worked for Michael O'Dwyer for a long period of time before he actually carried out his mission. And that just shows, whenever people say, oh, Sikhs took revenge, it's a very cringeworthy word to use.
It is. I think all these songs that revolve around Udham Singh, I've grown up with Badla, and it revolve around that. It doesn't really give justice to. If
the Gurus won't take Badla, the Maharaj had plenty of time, plenty of resources to take Badla, but they didn't. They what did? Because you take Badla from me, I'll take it from you, you take it from me. It continues. It doesn't break the cycle. But to break the cycle, somebody needs to analyze it and explain.
And perhaps we can do that through remembrance, and that's the whole power of looking at something objectively after the event, specifically after 30, 40 years, even 100 years. Hanji?
I just think also, those kind of situations, like stuff such as the genocide of Sikhs in November. I mean, don't forget, that was brushed under the carpet for many years. It wasn't really discussed. It required journalists to chuck the shoe at the Home Minister to actually bring it out again.
It's only really in the last 4, 5 years, maybe the taboos have lifted around discussing 84.
And I mean, we all know that the media can be anti-Sikh, but on the point of the November 84, I mean, I think they are quite joint on the fact that it was genocide. You can't deny it.
You can't really deny it.
You can't hide.
We went through. Sorry, there was in the immediate aftermath. There was a period of denial, a total denial. I mean, there was a period where, for many, but in the first instance, there was a complete denial. There was, maybe 2 or 3 Sikhs have been killed. That's about all there is, nothing else. And then for almost 10 years after that, literally a decade, there was denial, there was counter accusations of, well, the Sikhs that were killed because they distributed laddus and sweets, and they were celebrating the death of Indira Gandhi. So they pretty much brought it upon themselves. And I think we can also see, the events in November of 1984, what happened in Delhi and all over India as well. That's another point which we tend to forget. I mean, the Indian administration were very keen to keep the investigation strictly to the Delhi administration in that particular area, where they had to concede something like 3,000. But again, I think it's popularly known that that's a gross underestimate and isn't taking into account all the Sikhs of the entire country.
Well, we're finding out more and more.
We're finding out more and more, and it's still coming to light. But for years there was this denial, and in fact, if we look at, and again, there tends to be a feeling that these were some lumpen elements. These were just criminals that got involved, and this.
Well, we call them riots. I mean, and unfortunately, in India, it's still referred to as dange.
Dange.
That really doesn't really clarify what actually happened.
I think the clearest kind of, I suppose, the clearest picture that you can get from what the feeling was, the general population of India, and this is the general population cutting across all demographics. It wasn't just about some lumpen elements, as they put it, because what happened was in the constituencies where the people that are associated with organising and carrying out these massacres, so Sajjan Kumar's constituency and Jagdish Titler's constituency, these guys won the largest majorities of any Indian politician in the 84 elections. Congress had its best ever election result. It was a landslide victory. All of those things, you can't view them in any other way.
In isolation.
You can't view them in any other way than this was a vindication on the part of the population. The majority of voters were happy with what had gone on, and that's a fact. I mean, you don't vote for people if you don't agree with what they've done. This was well known, popularly known, what these men had done, and they were actually commended for it. And now that has changed in recent years, but it's only changed because we've remembered, because we haven't forgotten.
Because we're able to analyse, through this remembrance, we're able to analyse with I wouldn't say better technology, but perhaps a better understanding of the facts around the situation, and we're able to collate more information together.
Well, we're just not stopped, in the sense, we might not have given it as much energy as we should have, but certainly, those singing that haven't stopped, that have been relentless and kept going, they've kept that alive. And now future generations, I mean, we know when we have our march in June, we know when we see young Singhs in the Gurdwara, young Singhia in the Gurdwara. These people weren't even born 28 years ago, but they're there and they're interested in 84, and they feel that they've been wrong, that their community's been wrong. Now, why is that? They weren't there to see it. They don't they didn't necessarily see anything, but it's that remembrance which has kept that alive. And now the Indian establishment has been forced into a position to say, well, actually, okay, we concede. What happened in November 1984 was wrong.
They've made that statement.
They have, but there has also been a conscious attempt to try and separate two events. There's been a conscious attempt to try and separate Blue Star from November 1984. Concede November 1984 was bad and wrong, and it happened, and there were criminals, and we should have done more. But Blue Star was right. In fact, the two things are inextricably linked. And if November 1984 was wrong, then Blue Star was wrong as well. Because on both sides, the intention was the same, and it was to crush the Sikh psyche, which was wrong in itself.
And, you know, we've seen that in history repeatedly, you know, whether it's been the British, whether it's been the Afghans, the Mughals, you know, like you said, you know, we've had this battle with every establishment when the Sikh stands up for the truth.
No, just to kind of add to that, and maybe even say, George Orwell in his book aptly named 1984 as well.
Yeah, I know.
He writes in there to destroy a particular type of people is to destroy a particular type of people is by confusing and obscuring the history. So by not allowing them to remember what's happened through them, they are no longer, they're destroying it as a community. And I think personally I feel that we need to do more to ensure that we do remember what's happened to us in 1984. How did 1984 sort of come about? You know, what happened in 1978, for example, as well? How was that a precursor to what happened in 1984? And it was just because people were standing up for their rights. And coming back to what we were talking about Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji, and him being a political prisoner or prisoner of his conscience at the time, and trying to bring the community together and stand up for the community. And that's essentially what was happening in 1978, 1984, and it's led to the violence that we had to encounter.
I mean, what I find when you're talking about all this remembrance as well, we've got a wealth of Itihasic Gurdwaras. I don't know if any other faith group actually has this kind of journey that we can have when we go to India and when we go for a yatra, as we call it. You know, you go and learn so much history. When you said Maharaji Chola Sahib is in one of the Gurukars, I mean, that's just amazing that we've got these artifacts that can link back. We've got these, you know, these specific Gurdwaras at specific sites where something happened, and we owe that to the missiles. We owe that to, you know, the likes of Bhai Baghel Singh, you know, all those great Gursikhs who secured this history and ensured it was recorded, ensured there's Itihasic Gurdwaras. You know, I mean, it's amazing when you hear how Bangladesh and how the Delhi Gurdwaras came about, and how Bhai Baghel Singh ensured and safeguarded those plots of land, and ensured that that's the only reason we're in Delhi. It's not to take your land on. We just want our history recorded and preserved so that we today can sit here and have these discussions.
It's quite nicely you moved it on now. You know, like Baghel Singh, for example, you'd use other examples from history as well. From remembrance, the next thing is a vision. Any remembrance or any itihas which you look back, it gave birth to a new vision, a new progressive movement. And if you look at the modern time as we are now, when we take inspiration from Bandishore Divas, from 84, from all of the previous events, we then begin to think, okay, what can we do next? What can we contribute? And that vision is what we need to be now elaborated on. That vision is what we need to now clarify for our generation and for the forthcoming generation. What is that vision? Bhai Baghel Singh had that vision, and he succeeded. He took Dal Kila over, they put the Nishans up there, they taxed the Indian subcontinent to build up those Gurdwara. They weren't built with nothing. The the establishment of that particular time, when the Sikhs took over Lal Kila, gave 50% of the contribution to Sikhs to build Sisganj, Rakabganj,
I mean,
all these Gurdwara, to re-establish them, and commission the Sikhs to go out and find out these places where they are. So it goes to show that remembrance is as valuable, it's only as valuable as the vision is. If you do not draw in, I can't say the word again,
inspiration.
if you can't draw inspiration and then don't move on with it, then you're guilty. Then our generation is guilty for not taking the next step. And if we don't do the next step, then that's where you stop.
What we don't want to do is fall in a comfort zone where we just don't do anything. And I think
once you've stopped, then you're going to slide backwards. But wherever you have, that begins to slide away. And dare to say it, I think we have stopped.
No, we're in a comfort zone. We don't want to rock the boat. We might be saying all these things in our ardas.
Yeah.
We might be talking about Bandisho Divas and all the other sakas and even 1984, but we're in a comfort zone. Let's not rock the boat.
Because you know why? The vision will require, again, sacrifice. No vision is without a sacrifice. And that could be a sacrifice of time,
Commitment.
money,
Yeah.
commitment, your life. We've had quite a few Bhagat Puran Singhs, you know, his establishment came down to see us, 84s, Save 84. And you see, look, these people have now got a vision and they're working with this vision to take it further. Boru Saab have got a vision. Nishkam Sevak Jata have got a vision now. And if you look at these visions, it's quite amazing. They're all different parts of the world, but they all come into this one point of vision, which is education. Either it's coming naturally or just evolving, or either they all think I'm the same.
But education uplifts you out of poverty.
Well, it is now, because even now, our wider community is still very uneducated, and it's quite nice to see it now. A lot of the wider establishments are looking at this, and then are pumping a lot of money into Sikh education. And I think from that Sikh education, economical, social development will come further.
Definitely, 100%. I mean, I think I'm really glad that you've touched on Save 84 as a charity, because I think they're not getting the credit that they do. And Save 84 is a charity that's going and spending time with the widows and the aftermath and the victims of November 84. And we forget that this is not just about widows now, this is about a second and a third generation who unfortunately have not received the same privileges that they deserve, and they are in poverty. And with poverty come all the problems of poverty, you get drugs, you get addictions, and we are battling that now. And we have neglected Delhi. You know, we might be having these remembrance programs about the events of 1984, but what we're doing about the people who it affected, you know, how we actually helping them, and they do need help. And Save 84, as far as I know, are the only ones that are actually going there within the colonies, which are slums. They're nothing more than slums. Going into the colonies and trying to build a future for these victims, and not just giving them handouts, but to develop them through education, like Manmohan Singh said it.
I think there's also they've also done a very good video, which shows just 213 faces of
That's
Sikhs
very
who
powerful,
died.
yeah.
And they've got names, they've got families. You know, we need to relate to it. I mean, I think that's what happens. We sit in the West and we don't relate to actually the pain which people have gone through. And by looking at those videos, you do start seeing that, you know, this is an individual. You know, he might have had a family, he might have had this. What pain would he have felt when he was put on fire? Even this.
Well, you think about your father, you think about yourself, you think about your loved ones.
Even this, you know, Jasraj video. I don't know if you've seen that one, but that's a powerful image because they're walking through the streets with tires around their necks.
Yeah.
You know, again, that shows that does show how, you know, Sikhs are defiant as well. Because when we will remember like that. You know, you burnt us like that, and we will remember that we will walk down the streets with these tires around our necks.
Well, that was one of the things apparently that was being said in Delhi. Apparently at the time, they were saying, you know, it was kind of, they made a joke of it. They said "Yaad karega Khalsa." You know, we say "Raj karega Khalsa," we're going to say "Yaad karega Khalsa." But as much as they said it then as a joke, it's as much as they don't want us to remember either. You know, there's an active campaign to stop us remembering. I'd like to say that, you know, who are the people that ask us not to remember? The people that say forget. It's not the victims' families. The victims' families want us to remember. I mean, even if one of our elders dies, if one of our parents die, and they die of old age and pretty peacefully, you remember them every day. Now imagine if it was your child murdered brutally in the prime of his life. How can you forget that? I think, you know, ultimately, unless you've lost a loved one, unless you've seen your sister, your mother, your daughter raped in front of your eyes, you don't have the right to tell other people to forget. You really don't have the right. You know, what Virji was talking about before with regards to our history, there's been an active campaign to break our history, to either try and revise it, to make it wrong or dilute it, or the burning of the Sikh reference library after Blue Star, which was done whilst the complex was under full Indian Army control. They set fire to it. They removed a lot of literature, a lot of handwritten manuscripts from the Sikh reference library, which is still held by India to this day, something they admitted to in 2004. George Fernandez, the then defence minister, admitted we have this materials, and then later on when the question was asked again in the Lok Sabha, they decided to deny it. You know, we're in a situation now where we're talking about erecting a memorial to the Shaheeds Shaheeds of Blue Star, and yet the government isn't happy with that. The government is actively trying to stop that taking place. Now, when a museum was erected for Indira Gandhi, which exists there in Delhi, and there's a glass case there with her sari and the bullet-ridden sari that's blood-stained still, no Sikh, as far as I understand, ever protested.
There was no objection.
That happens, no objection.
That's right.
Most government buildings, most police stations do have a hanging photograph of Indira Gandhi in what is supposed to be a secular society. We're talking about erecting a memorial within a Sikh Gurdwara. So I don't
within
understand,
the centre of the Sikhs.
within the Sikh faith, the centre of the Sikh faith, and yet that is an issue. That's a problem. Why is that? Why is that a problem? It's a problem because they want the Sikh community to forget what happened to them. That's all it is. Why do you go to Jallianwala Bagh and individual bullet holes have been secured so that they don't deteriorate, so that they're there for generations to go on to? But yet, what happened in Harmandir Sahib? Harmandir Sahib, after the attack, after Blue Star, the government sponsored their own Gar Seva project to try to rebuild the Agal Takht, so we wouldn't be able to see it. And even to this day, you can't really see. There's very little evidence of what went on at Harmandir Sahib. And the last thing they want is a memorial there because they want us to forget, because they know that's where we draw our courage and strength from, and they know also that it's one thing to do something, but it's another thing to face the consequences. They feel that they can do what they've done and not face the consequences, and life doesn't work like that.
I mean, it's almost we're grateful to the Western media, really, because if the Western media hadn't had archived a lot of what took place at that point in time, I suppose we wouldn't have much to look back upon as well, because, like you said, certain things are easy to cover up or to remove from our history, to erase from our history. But some of those archived material, ITN news reports, BBC news reports, clearly show what happened. So you can't really deny that.
Also, I mean, back to the Shaheed Ganj which they want to make in Harmandir Sahib. I mean, that's just really. We've done that before. We're always doing that. We're remembering.
There's nothing new for us.
There's nothing new for us.
That's
We're
true.
always remembering
Yeah.
us. We're remembering by doing this thing. So we're not doing anything different there. And also another important part of Agal Takht Sahib, when it was rebuilt afterwards, the bottom part of Agal Takht Sahib, where there's a glass, that is full of blood. That is full of blood-stained stone, marble. Yeah. So that again, has been intact there as well. So there will be things there which will be lasting forever.
Things are going to manifest as time goes on as well. They say. The truth comes out, and things do manifest later on, and we'll definitely see more things coming forward.
Yeah. You spoke earlier about the library being burnt down and a lot of literature being lost, and I think that's a great shame for the Sikh community. And the Punjab Digital Library, which is a charity as well, they're working to once again establish that library and digitize it as well. It's just something that I would sort of want to mention and just draw your attention to something. You should
Definitely. I mean, with technological advances, we have less and less excuses not to have our history preserved.
Absolutely, and to be aware of our history in that case. And not just so coming back to the remembrance as well that for the First and Second World War, there's a lot of powerful imagery of Sikhs being involved in the world wars, and I think that as well, so for me, it gives me inspiration, gives me courage, and makes me proud to be Sikh. Makes me proud to wear the star and be seen in public. I'm not only in Britain. I mean, well, not only in Britain. I was going to say that they were involved in the world wars. They were sort of all over the world. They were deployed to, and we talk about Sikhs being persecuted in India, but there's images of Sikhs in Japan, being.
I've seen that image actually. Yeah, blind. They were sitting there in Samadhi. It almost looks like the Sikhs sitting in Samadhi, and they're just having the Japanese army have a plain shot of this. It's a very inspiring picture, and you just look at that, and it takes you back to, this is what, 60 years ago. Yeah, it looks very Purathan in that respect. It feels very much that spirit was there at that specific point in time as well.
Just quick 2 points. First, relating to it in terms of the Sikh heart, the Sikh conscience is within the Darbar Sahib and the Agal Takht. There's no denying that. The Meri Piri stance is right there physically and spiritually. And as different administrations have come into power, they've always tried to strike the Sikhs at the heart, be it Ahmad Shah Abdali, be it the British thereafter, be it the Mughals, and be it the Indian administration at the present time. So they've always tried to rewrite history, try to destroy history as well. But one thing that we've had, which is very good, is Kathawajiks, is Prachariks, who are well learned, and they've kept us in tune of the facts, which we should be grateful to them, Prachariks as well, and we should obviously give them due respect.
And organisations as well. I mean,
Yes.
I've got to say that one thing over the last 28 years, and credit where credit's due, the Sikh Federation UK,
Yes.
and other Jathebandis who have ensured that certain things in the UK carry on, such as the Remembrance march that we have in Hyde Park and Trafalgar Square. That's an amazing influence in our lives, at least, because I think we perhaps would have not realised what had happened had they not been ensuring that happens every year. And we've helped them with the Seva ourselves over the last few years. We know how much work is involved in setting that whole stage up, the whole exercise. It's a massive, massive exercise. So credits due Sikh Federation UK have done an amazing job in ensuring that remembrance is kept.
So therefore, in terms of our whole history or historical contents, it needs to be always revised and needs to be kept intact, and that's without a doubt. And secondly, Sikhs were inspired from that particular history. Look, Sade Guruane, Sada Itihas is based upon Sarbat Bala. And then that led on for them taking participation in World War I and World War II. If Sikhs didn't have such a rich culture or such a rich belief, look, we're not only fighting for our particular freedoms, we also look at anybody who's being oppressed. And we then fight for their freedom as well. So when the British call did come for Sikhs to participate and defend the rights, Sikhs did go to that call. And as you have the figures in front of you, over 180,000 Sikhs took participation in World War I, in World War II, and paid the contribution to the freedom of this country. So we, again, all of this comes from our remembrance, our itihas. So if we are to move forward, we need to then keep on drawing back from these events.
I mean, let's put it into context. 83,000 Sikh soldiers. This is the Khanda Poppy Project website. 83,000 Sikh soldiers killed, over 100,000 wounded. So there's big, significant figures. And I don't think we're going out there and telling this story well enough. And
I just wanted, just one thing I wanted to highlight, just, all this history and everything which we remember, which we're calling remembrance. I mean, one outcome of this was the landmark legal case in 1983, Mandela versus Dowell and others.
Right.
Yeah, that was landmark. I mean, the Commission of Racial Equality, by reviewing, the one point they said that the Sikhs were given a racial group
an ethnic group
status.
Yes.
Reason being, they had a long shared history, which keeps the group, which the group is conscious and distinguishing it from other groups, and the memory of which it keeps alive. So that is the outcome of remembrance, that we had a landmark winning case which gave us a ethnic group, a racial group status, a legal decision in this country.
It's only ourselves and the Jews that hold that status to this day, I might believe.
That's correct.
Other people have tried, but they haven't.
I mean, I think that's an amazing point to finish on. If it wasn't for that remembrance and the way we have gone ahead and kept our history intact, we wouldn't have had the recognition of being an ethnic group within the UK and be able to have the privileges of sustaining our identity and safeguarding our identity as it stands today. One thing I do want to mention is that it is Remembrance Day on Sunday, November the 11th, and as we mentioned in the previous show, we do encourage Sikhs to go and attend the Remembrance Day programs in your local area. We definitely will be within the Ilford area. The Khanda poppies, I believe, have been sold out on the website, but I have noticed that certain veterans are selling the Khanda poppies. I spotted one being sold in Sainsbury's the other day by one of the veterans who was selling poppies. So they are available, but that's not an excuse not to attend. If you don't have one of these, please do attend. Represent us as the Sikh community. It's something that we share with the mainstream community. It's something that we collectively were involved in with them. So certainly something that we should be capitalizing. But represent yourselves as Sikhs and do attend. Again, on behalf of the committee of Singh Sabha London East, I'd like to thank Sikh Channel for coming down. I'd like to thank my fellow Veers from the local area for being involved in this show, and we'll see you soon. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. We're talking about people who've been cut by saws, boiled in cauldrons. So that's the kind of imagery that we're discussing. Very graphic in the Gurdwara. I think often we don't understand the graphic descriptions that are being mentioned in the Ardas itself. And then you walk around the Gurdwara Sahibs and you will see our pictures within the langar halls and other parts of the Gurdwara of various events that have taken place in Sikh history. You will see the images of Bhai Taru Singh, of Bhai Mani Singh, of the Sikh lady, the Sikh Bibiyan, whose babies, the parts of their children were wrapped around their as hars around their neck. So got very graphic images there. Now often an outsider might come in there and look at us and think, well, what are you guys on? You know, what are you guys going on about? Why are you constantly bringing this imagery out? Why are you constantly digging up on the past? I mean, is that something that we should be accused of? Are we constantly digging up the past? Should we leave the past behind? Should we just walk away? You know, should we just get on with our future? Is that something we should do? You know, perhaps we bring too much of our past up. So let's go straight into that discussion. I mean, you know, if anyone's keen to start that off.
I think one of the important things is that this remembrance and this focusing on what our Guru Sikhs did. First of all, that's just us. That's just us respecting those who followed the footsteps of the Guru. Don't forget Guru Arjan Dev Ji, Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji. They gave these gruesome sacrifices as well. Mm-hmm. How they were, you know, how Guru Arjan.
And we either commemorate at the Gurdwara or we discuss amongst ourselves within the community, which have a massive impact and a massive effect on us as a global community. To name a few, in the month of November, we start off by remembering the genocide, as we call it now, that took place in November 1984, where mass killings of Sikh took place, rapes of Sikh women, and the looting and the property damage of Sikh properties within Delhi and other cities took place in just a short span of 6 days, I believe, in total. So that's something that we normally start the month of November in. Then we go into the month, and Bandishore Divas comes into the month as well. So we have remembrance and contemplation on Guru Har Gobind Sahib, our sixth Guru, and we focus upon the activities of Guru Har Gobind Sahib Gurdwara, particularly the events around Bandishore Divas and the release of Guru Har Gobind Sahib. So that's something, again, we'll bring into the discussion. And finally, another strong event that takes place and plays a massive part, especially the British Sikhs, is remembrance, the actual Remembrance Day itself, and remembrance of the World Wars and the Sikh participation within the World Wars. Now, as you can see around, as Sikhs, we commemorate the sacrifices of the veterans and the people, the soldiers who lost their lives in the World Wars with the poppy. We're aware of a specific Khanda poppy that's also been commissioned by the Sikh community to represent our sacrifices within the Sikh community. So we played a big part in that, and that's something else that we'll bring into this discussion. So, talking about remembrance, starting from what does remembrance actually mean to us? Why does remembrance play such an important part in Sikh culture? When we talk about November 84, and we talk about just not November, but other events in Sikh history such as Kalukaras, genocides, Sakas, for instance, the Nankana Sahib massacres of the 1920s, Panja Sahib, the deaths at Gurdwara Panja Sahib back in the 1920s as well, 1984, battles, Kalukaras, constantly comes up in Sikh discussions, in kathas, and in Sikh prayer as well, in Ardas. Now let's not forget, remembrance plays a massive part in the Sikh Ardas, and we're all familiar with the actual Ardas itself, particularly the part where we say Jina Singha Singhaniyan ne Dharm hate sees tite band katwaye khopra lahaiyan charkariyan te chare aarya na chire gaye gurdwara di seva lai qurbaniyan kitiyan dharm nahi hare sikhi kesa swasa sang nibai तिना दी कमाई दा ध्यान करके खालसा जी साहिब बोलना जी वाहेगुरु. That's something that we say twice a day. Most good Sikhs would say that twice a day. Now if you actually look at the literal translation and literal meanings of that, and we're talking about people who have sacrificed their heads, the heads have been cut off. We're talking about people who have been cut into pieces, from the joints of their bodies. We're talking about people whose scalps have been removed. We're talking about people who've been tied and rotated on wheels and broken into pieces.
In Devji Shahidi, we know how if somebody was to find out, it was gruesome, and how Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji, that was gruesome. So I mean, we don't forget those, and we then respect those who followed those footsteps. And in terms of the past, I mean, we're not dwelling on the past. I think what we do from that is we draw inspiration in order to move forward. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is that when the Vadda Kalukara happened in the 18th century, 25 years later, the missiles came in, then Maharaj Ranjit Singh. So from that Kalukara, we then drew inspiration to actually build kingdoms from.
Mm-hmm.
We took the step forward in that. So that's really, from this remembrance, we actually draw the inspiration to move forward. So like what they would say, the past becomes is the reason for your future, and that is shown in Sikh history. Mm-hmm. And that's how we, that's how we will move forward. Whatever the past is, will be.
Saying that they say that if you don't know where you've come from, you don't know where you're going. Certainly, that I think applies to us as Sikhs, because I think when we structured the Ardas, when our ancestors or predecessors, as you would like to call them, did structure our Ardas, they ensured that we remembered what we needed to remember in order to what Bhai Sahib said here, in order to draw some inspiration, to have a direction, to take ourselves forward. Hanji.
Just to echo what Das just said, the word remember itself is something which is obviously an action, a physical action that you are going through the thought process of thinking about those particular events that took place. What you're doing is you're reigniting, reliving almost those particular events.
Mm-hmm.
And like Singh said, it is to draw that kind of
Once again, on behalf of the committee of Singh Sabha London East, I'd like to welcome you all to the Sikh Channel Youth Show. With me, I have a panel of young Sikhs from our local area. I'll go ahead and introduce the panel. I have Bhai Amritpal Singh. Now, Bhai Amritpal Singh is a business consultant and also an active member of the Sikh community within the local area, and also quite involved in activities within the city groups, which some of the Sikh professional groups organise. We have Manmohan Singh ji. Now, Manmohan Singh, familiar face to you all. Manmohan Singh is a police officer in the Metropolitan Police, heavily involved in local seva as well as national seva. We have Bhai Tasveer Singh at the back. Tasveer Singh is a finance manager, again a very familiar face to you. And we have at the end here Bhai Sukhbir Singh. Now, Bhai Sukhbir Singh has a very interesting job. He's a headhunter, stroke management consultant. So take that as you may. But Bhai Sahib's involved in some very interesting things as part of his daily work. So as usual, we'll go straight into the topic. And this week, we're going to talk about what's relevant around the month of November. And that is the actual terminology or the phrase remembrance. How does remembrance actually affect us? Now, the reason we've chosen this topic, remembrance, is that in the month of November, we do appear to have quite a few historical events that we get together